Alrighty then, let's get started. Hey guys, it's Jody, and if you may tell in the background, I guess there's none here right now, but we have 3 dogs, and today I'm telling 3 lovely stories in honor of finding little Kirby. So the first story is going to be finding him and that wonderful story about community and a very, very helpful Facebook page, which all those kinds of links will be in the description, but I'll get to that as they come up. So that's the first story. Second story is going to be the horror story of getting my tonsils out, and that will be a little graphic, so I'll give you a chance to skip it when it comes up, but we'll get to that. Story number 3, I haven't yet decided what I want to do for it, so let's just call it a surprise, shall we? Story number 1, how we found Kirby. So lovely little Kirby was lost a week ago by the time this is up. And I don't know how he survived in the woods, but he did, in a known coyote area. For those of you who don't know, Kirby is a little chihuahua. Insert clip here. He's little, right? Like, how could that little thing live in the woods for a week by himself? With coyotes in the area? Well, let me tell you this. Before he was taken into a foster program in the States, little Kirby used to be a stray in California. So he already kind of knew how to run the streets. And thank goodness for that, because I really think that benefited him. So as soon as they came home and announced that he was lost, after looking for him in the pouring rain for 3 hours with the 2 other dogs, I got on Kijiji, Craigslist, and I stumbled upon this amazing Facebook page called Missing Pets in BC. I wouldn't have found him without the people on that page and the page itself, but I'll get to that in a second. So I checked every day, 3 to 4 times a day, as often as I could, just hoping and praying to see something, even someone selling him, like just anything. And we, of course, are sitting here brainstorming all these different things that could have happened. And Saturday, we went to the beach. So we kind of needed a break, and we were all just trying to relax. We all knew that was awkward. We all knew, like I was saying, that he was alive and well, although we had no proof of it. But something in our guts and our hearts were telling us that he was fine and not to worry too much. We went to the beach, and I found a beautiful seashell, which is in that jar behind me. And found out that there was a crab in it, and it's gonna make me kind of sad talking about this because I got really attached to the little guy, but I named him Kirby, and he wasn't moving, and I actually thought he was dead, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna name him Kirby, and if he turns out to be alive, that means Kirby's okay. And not a second later, I swear the crab started moving, and by the time we got back to the car, he was crawling around in my hand. We put him in the jar and brought him home, and sadly, he died about 4 hours after we got home, and I really don't want to expand on that, but he didn't make it, but I think that he lived his sign of just telling us that Kirby was okay. Yesterday morning, I woke up, my sister needed my laptop, so I sat next to her while she was using it, checked the Facebook page, and there was a sighting of a little dog in the area that he was lost that sounded just like him. And when I read the ad out to my sister, she knew it was Kirby. She just knew it. And I suggested that we go out and go look for him, and she just figured, you know, he was sighted last night in an area, and the odds of him still being there weren't very high. So I just figured, okay, whatever. When her roommate got home and I read out the ad to him, he also said, yeah, that's Kirby. And immediately was like, come on, Frank, let's go to the woods. So I joined them on the adventure, and what do you know, we got little Kirby here now. But we'll get to that. So little Kirby was pretty much waiting for us, and I don't even know how this happened, but he was just meant to be caught yesterday. It was supposed to happen like that. We made 2 unexpected stops on our way to go get him, and without them, we wouldn't have him. Honestly, we would not have him here with us if we didn't make those 2 stops. Because when we got to the cross street, we took a left to go south and actually drove right past him. He ran right behind the car and we stopped, parked, and I got out and went after him. I didn't run, I lightly jogged because I didn't want to spook him, but I also didn't want to lose him. So I was kind of jogging and I ended up having to stop and wait to cross a little street, and while I was doing that, he got up over a hill. So lost sight of him, and Bryce and I, who's our roommate, he and I looked around for a good hour. And at one point, we were actually trying to figure out which way to go. So should we go back down the alley, or should we go forward, or should we go down a different street? Like, just trying to make a game plan. And an eagle flew right over us, which apparently is some kind of good omen. So we flew where the eagle flew, and he ran into some people, and we went our separate ways so that we could just hopefully find him faster. We decided to meet up at the car, and I got there first, and when he showed up, he was like, yeah, I ran into the friend of the guy who posted the ad on that Facebook page. And I was like, oh wow, how convenient. So they exchanged numbers, or rather Bryce gave the guy his number. And when we were thinking of giving up, well, we were thinking of calling it a day because there was just no sign of him. And we were just hoping that the guy would call if he saw Kirby. So we had our fingers crossed. But not even a minute later, the guy called and said that he was tracking Kirby with his own dog. And Kirby was making a run for it again. So we hopped in the car, do a loop around, and when we finally got to the guy, he was like, sorry man, I lost him, he went that way. Turns out there was another woman in a car who was she basically cut him off, so he didn't go down another alley, and she was following him in a car. We were coming this way, and he was just running along in between us. And here's little Kirby. We stopped the car, and Bryce got out on his side, I got out on my side with treats, and Kirby tried to make a run for it. He went to go jump over Bryce. Bryce caught him and flipped him upside down, and little Kirby, latched onto his hand and then sterilized the wound by pissing everywhere. How lovely, right? We got Kirby in the car, and very quickly he calmed down, and we were feeding him, just trying to get him to calm down a little, and it ended up working out. And that's the story of how we caught Kirby and brought him back home. By the time he got home though, he was tired, so we gave him a quick bath just to take a look over him, make sure that he was okay, had no like real wounds or anything wrong with him, and then we fed him a lot of food and set up his bed and had him just lie down and relax, and he was pretty good. And last night, my sister and I went out for groceries and came back and had obviously bags on our arms and stuff. We opened the door to come in, and he goes fucking running down the street. Like, are you kidding me? I just spent like a good chunk of my day looking for you, and you're just gonna take the first chance you get to fucking leave? Excuse you? I don't think so. So, I'm just gonna end that story there. There's nothing else really to say other than he's happy and healthy and excited to be home. So, just so you know, the first links in the description before any of my social media stuff is going to be the links for the Missing Pets in BC Facebook page, and I highly recommend checking that out if you've lost or found any pets. I checked it every day when I lost Kirby, so I can only imagine how many people out there haven't posted something on the site but are still checking just in case. They'll make you an ad if you send them a picture and your information for free. Like, they just put it up on their page and let everyone know, and once they're found, they just update it. And without that page, without that community, we would not have Kirby. And I'm just thankful because even after they posted the ad and we went out to go look for him, people were still sending me sightings. Once they realized that he was a lost dog, people were like emailing me and texting me and just saying like, I saw him here at this time, and it was really helpful, and I'm very thankful for that page. Moving on to the second story, which is the story of how I got my tonsils out. So let's do a little bit of a prequel, shall we? First of all, for the majority of my life, I've had something wrong with me. I'm the medical child, okay? I'm the kid in my family who is, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong with me, okay? So for the first little bit of my life, it was ear infections. Just constant ear infections, painful ear infections, and it was just awful. And all of a sudden, it switched to a sore throat. And someone could just walk by me with a sore throat, and I would catch it. But it wasn't just like, oh man, my throat hurts. I would be bedridden. I couldn't get up. I couldn't talk. At one point, I couldn't swallow. It was awful. And only in recent years did it get bad enough to even consider taking my tonsils out. Because if you don't know, they don't do that very often anymore. It all kind of started, I believe I got it out in 2012. So in the spring of 2012, I got a sore throat. I got strep, or it wasn't strep. But my tonsils were already the size of golf balls. So when they swell up, they get pretty big. So I had it really bad. I was on the couch for, I think, like 2 weeks. Couldn't really eat anything. And for the first time ever, I still had my appetite. So it wasn't like I wasn't hungry, so I wasn't trying to make myself eat, but I was starving. I was so hungry and I couldn't eat, I couldn't swallow, I couldn't even drink water at one point. And when it finally went away with the help of antibiotics, which by the way, just, I became pretty much immune to the antibiotics because I had a sore throat so much. Plus I was allergic to penicillin. I am allergic to penicillin, which is the #1 treatment for sore throats. Yeah, that sucks. Anyways, not 30 days later, was sick again and ended up in the hospital in the emergency room twice within 2 days. Once was because my tonsils were so big I couldn't swallow. I could barely get air through. So we had to rush down to the emergency. I couldn't walk. I was so dizzy and lightheaded, and they gave me some steroids to take the swelling down, and I was so happy to just be able to drink, and it helped so much. But the next day when I went to get in the tub, I took my temperature first, and I had a fever of 104. And that was scary, so I called my mom and I called my stepdad, and no one was answering, so I called my aunt. And she told me to just wait at home, and she was going to come over, and she called the 811 nurses hotline, and they basically said to bring me in. There's nothing they could really do, but they did whatever they could, and ultimately things just worked themselves out, I guess. After that happened, my mom decided to take me to the family doctor and try and get a referral to an ENT specialist, which if you don't know stands for ears, nose, and throat. So it didn't take long to have an appointment, and we went in to see him, and he took one look at my throat and was so surprised that we didn't come in sooner. Like, he couldn't believe that I'd waited so long and gone through so much of that crap just to finally come in and be like, it's not an option. And he just took one look in there and said, like, you should have been here sooner, and like, we need to get those out. I think in less than 6 months I was ready for surgery, and that's where the horror story starts. I guess the actual horror aspect of the story doesn't start for another week, but getting my tonsils out was not, ultimately I don't think it was worth it. I really don't. I had such a traumatizing experience that I really don't think it was worth it. So, got them out, no problem. Recovery was going smoothly until the next Thursday, when all of a sudden things just started going downhill fast. So Thursday night, I didn't go to bed until like 2 in the morning. I don't know why, I was just up late. And I went to take my pills, take medication every night, went to take them, and it just felt weird. Like, it felt like it scratched my throat, like something just didn't feel right. And I felt like I had to spit, so I took one of those little cup things and I spit, and it was just blood. That's it. Which is normal. So I filled about 2 or 3 of those little medicine cup things full of blood, and my mom just felt like it was a bit too much, like that wasn't normal. We get there and they just basically tell us that's the normal amount, they're gonna cauterize it or whatever, which is where the traumatization starts. So it's basically like putting like a lit match in the back of your throat and just trying to close the wound and stop the bleeding. And it apparently worked. The downfall was, in case I didn't stop bleeding, they needed to give me a special IV, one that they can put blood through if needed. And the stupid girl missed my vein a good 20 times. And I'm not exaggerating, okay? Like, she really kept missing my veins. And it was painful, so they switched arms, and then they got, she was like a nurse in training, so they got the actual girl to do it, and they couldn't get it in. And then they eventually decided just to put in a regular IV, and I was just like, I'm not having this. And after that crappy thing, they sent me home, which is fine, you know, whatever, except I woke up 8 a.m. bleeding again, about the same amount. So my mom just kind of basically sat with me and rubbed my back while it happened, and I fell asleep once it was done. Thank God it woke me up every time. Before it happened, it would wake me up, because I probably would have choked on my own blood. While I was sleeping and after she got up, she called the ENT clinic and just explained what had happened and whether or not they wanted me to come in. And they decided that they wanted me to come in. So we get there, we're in the elevator, and as the doors close so we can go up, I start bleeding again. And we have nothing with us, right? So I'm just kind of like, bleh. And my mom gives me a washcloth, and I'm the kind of person, and I'm like, I don't want to spit out in your washcloth. Like, no. But I had to, so I was just kind of sitting there like that, and both times before it had just kind of stopped on its own, but this time it wasn't really stopping, so they took me into the chair, and well, they took me right in from the waiting room, and we're trying to cauterize it, and it wasn't really working, so then they tried to freeze it with one of those big dentist needles. That was extremely painful. And after my experience with the IV in the morning, I can honestly say that I don't like needles anymore. They decided they were going to admit me once they finally stopped the bleeding, just to watch me overnight, make sure that it had finally stopped, because it wasn't really normal at that point. I agreed to stay on the one condition that they would not put an IV in me. My mom just kind of laughed and explained what had happened early in the morning, and they were just kind of like, okay, you know, if you bleed again really bad, we're gonna need to put an IV in, but for now, you seem fine, so whatever, right? After my mom left, well, she came and left or whatever, right? It was 8 o'clock by the time she went home to go to bed. And the doctor was doing his rounds or whatever, and I started to bleed again. So they took me in the little chair, the nurses held my hands, they tried to stop the bleeding. It didn't work. It just... Like I was saying, they were telling me that if I started to bleed again, that they were probably going to need to take me back into the OR to put me under and properly stop the bleeding, because it was too much blood at that point, and just not good. And they also decided to tell me that they were going to need to put an IV in, because I'd lost a decent amount of blood at that point in total, and that they decided that it would be best if I had an IV in my arm to just give a little drip and try and lower the bleeding or whatever. And this is where it gets pretty scary. I mean, to the point where I actually thought I was going to die and asked them if I was going to die. So 15 minutes later, the doctor was coming in to check on me before he was going to go home for the night, and I started bleeding again. He came in, set me up, and left. And although it was a semi-private room, so there was somebody else in there with me, they left me alone an awful lot for the fact that I was I was hemorrhaging at that point. And I had lost, let's see, you know, like those little kidney-shaped pans? In total, by the time I started bleeding that fifth time, I probably filled a good 5 or 6 of those full of my blood. And at that point, you know, it was coming out really fast. And I didn't know what to do. There was a nurse there trying to help me. And when she left at one point, they were trying to give me Gravol just because I was feeling sick and all that stuff. And they came in the room and I was throwing up blood clots. Like those big cooking bowls? Yeah, probably 2 or 3 of those. And I just was throwing it up. Just blood and the clots, and it just was awful. So that's why they gave me the Gravol. I was throwing up. They just wanted to calm my stomach down, and I thought that it kicking in, like, turns out I actually passed out, but I thought that the feeling was the Gravol, because I'd never taken Gravol before. And I was still, like, semi-conscious in a sense that I could hear them, but I couldn't move, couldn't talk, nothing like that. The nurse came back in, and, obviously, like, shook me a little bit, and once she realized I didn't move, she pulled the thing out of the wall, and they actually called a code blue. When I later asked them about it, they just explained that it's if a person is unresponsive. People from the ICU, people from all the different floors, and of course the code blue team and just everything. And I remember looking up at the doctor and asking him if I was gonna die, and he said, "Not if I can help it." And at that point, I still had another 45 minutes before they were gonna have me in for surgery, because they decided that that's what they were gonna do. So they got the best person on the floor who put in my first IV to put in a second one, because at that point I had lost so much blood that they were pretty sure I was going to need a blood transfusion. That's scary as fuck. I didn't need to get a transfusion, although in the end I probably should have. They wheeled me to the emergency room. Well, they wheeled me down to the OR, and they were going to put me under and all that stuff, and everything worked out fine. By the time I woke up, the bleeding had stopped, and it turned out I was bleeding in 3 different spots. There was no way it was gonna stop on its own. They couldn't believe it. I was back in my room, and they shared with me that, so your hemoglobin, yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it, is supposed to be at, I think, around like 150. Mine was down to, I think, 74. No, 84, and slowly dropping. So I ended up staying in the hospital for, I think, another 2 nights before they let me go home, and they only let me go home once they came up a little bit to kind of show that it was on the mend. And it was scary. I lost more than half of my blood. I was literally like a few points away from needing a blood transfusion, and that's really scary for me. But yeah, you know, after that it was a smooth recovery. I couldn't believe it. It was nuts. I think that's all for story number 2, and since this video is getting really long, I'm not even gonna bother with the story number 3, but if you guys want to hear another story, maybe one from my childhood, or another story like one of the 2 that I just did, leave a like, comment below, subscribe, you know, anything like that. I hope you guys liked today's story time. I am working on a really fun video for you guys, but I'm not entirely sure when it's going to be out. A little trip update though. Right now the date to leave is sometime around like June 3rd. And I'm kind of sad because I really don't want to leave this place. It's beautiful and I really do love it here. But who knows, I could be coming back for university, and that's a whole new adventure on its own. But we'll get to that in another video. If you've got an idea that you'd like me to use, or a tag video idea, any YouTubers in the area that you think I should collab with, anything like that, just leave a comment, let me know. You can message me. I'm also on Twitter, but all of those links are in the description. And just check me out, I guess. I hope you liked this video. That's all for today. Jody out.